Hello, welcome to the Shelly Show. I'm Shailendra and you're watching this simulcast live on LinkedIn, Twitter, Facebook, and YouTube. For you to view this episode and other sessions that I run on emerging technologies live, I would request you to follow me so that you can be alerted when there is a live session on. This gives you an opportunity to ask questions directly to our guests. So please press the follow button at the bottom. That aside, today I have a different show. So I'm not going to have one guest, not two guests. I've got three guests today. So I've got with me three very special guests who have been delivering value to the industry using data for the past few years. And I think everyone from a beginner to an experienced data scientist would like to learn from them and would have a lot of questions for them. So here is your opportunity to ask them questions directly. So let me not waste any time and quickly bring our guests to you. My first guest is an old friend of mine, Sanjay Sharma. Sanjay is a managing director with Accenture Digital and leads Applied Intelligence Global Capability in India. He has over 26 years of experience in application of data science across multiple domains, industries, and geographies. I have personally worked with him. He's one of the best in the industry. So let me bring in Sanjay. Sanjay, welcome to the Shelly Show.
Thank you, Shelly. Everybody.
Okay. Thank you very much for taking out time. My second guest today is Lorenzo Ampil. Lorenzo is a machine learning product manager at Thinking Machines, a global AI consulting firm with operations in Singapore and Manila. He specializes in products that utilize deep learning and machine learning on NLP for various industries. Prior to this, he also worked at Uber as an analyst, where he handled projects related to NLP, analytics, and automation for the APAC regions community. So let me bring in Lorenzo. Hi, Lorenzo. How are you going?
Hi, Shelly. Doing great. Glad to be here.
Welcome to the show. And finally, we have Swati Joshi. Swati is a data AI evangelist working at the intersection of business and technology, championing the use of data and analytics for business strategy and decision making. She has been a startup founder and as well as have worked with large companies like Shell and Singapore Airlines. Okay, so let me welcome Swati. Hi, Swati. How are you?
Hi, thanks, Shelly, for having me.
Good stuff. Welcome to all three of you. So this is the first roundtable that we are running. And as we discussed initially, what we will do is we will talk about processes, the skills, and some kind of success stories. So Sanjay, the first area that we're going to look at is the data science process. So my first question to all three of you is there any structured process that has been used in data science space, or is it more or less hit and trial methodology that we've been using? So from a consulting point of view, Sanjay, what do you think?
Shelly, over a period of time, this is getting more and more structured, and one of the reason is, see, in old time, data science was primarily used for consulting purpose, right? So finding out value and then giving a strategic advice, how you can tap this value and harvest this value, etc., etc. Gradually now, the data science is being used in production. That is, okay, I am happy with the model and the analytic output which is coming. And now I want to push this straight into my execution process, right? And that's where the structure is becoming more and more formalized now. So now there's a process where you sort of, in an automated way, do the data cleansing, data validation, etc. Then you have processes through which you determine what should be your leaderboard for models and how you select a model, and then how you manage that entire farm of models and how these models get executed and how you are evaluating that. So there's a whole lot of structured process now compared to what it used to be years ago when it was half art, half science.
Yep. So I think as we worked together, we also created that structured end-to-end linear process, right from data collection to providing an output, which then became an outcome going forward. So thank you for shedding light on that. Lorenzo, from a product creation point of view, because you're a product manager and you create data science products, what is your point of view on how structured this data science process is when you're creating a product?
Yeah, so I think a perspective I can share with the structure of data science now is that before, companies would see the word data scientist and think, oh, this person knows how to communicate, this person knows how to run models, this person knows how to query, they also know how to productionize things. But then what we're seeing now from a product standpoint, if you actually want to create like AI products, is that there's a distinction. The distinction between the roles within an AI product are becoming more clear. So for example, in the context of a data product, you don't actually just build something, right? You need to get buy-in from someone first. You need to pitch an idea. You need to have someone who understands what kind of value you can create with AI and machine learning kind of things. And that's where data strategists come in. They're the ones who talk to stakeholders. They talk to, basically people, and they make pitches. And that's me as a lot of the time as a product manager. Aside from that, you also have the people who are working more on the data engineering side. They're the ones who are thinking about, oh, where do we get the data? Is it inside a company? Is it outside? And they worry about getting the data where it needs to be at the right time. And only after you get that data can you have an actual machine learning researcher getting in that data and actually processing training models out of it. And once you have machine learning models in, you still have to bring it to production, as Sanjay said. So that's where the next component comes in, where we have what you would call machine learning engineers. They are the people who worry about the problems like, okay, let's say I have a model and it takes 2 seconds to run. But what if I need it to run in half a second for 10 million people at the same time? So it's like a whole set of problems at the same time. So yeah, so basically this idea that from a really generalized word of this is what a data scientist is, we're getting a very clear idea of what the machine learning AI pipeline looks like. And at each step in the pipeline, from a product development standpoint, we get people with very specific skills at different stages of the product development cycle.
Okay. I will come back to that. There are a couple of things that just came to mind. I think Sanjay will also have to make a comment there, and I will come back to you. But let me bring in Swati. So Swati, to tell you the truth, I've worked at corporate side of things for 8 years doing this. But I have a very different perception of how corporates work. So if I ask you from a corporate point of view, how does an organization look at data science? Even the processes. In my days, good old days, it used to start with a hit and trial kind of stuff. There was no structure. The structure in my life for data science only came in when I joined Accenture, which is far later. I used to say, well, you got to hit and trial before you get an answer, before you get there. So is that true even today? So is it all hit and trial at the corporate level, or is it structured if you look at the processes for data science?
So I think in previous times it used to be hit and trial, but there is more structure coming in definitely at the moment. And if you think of it, like what Lorenzo also said, that even before you start working on the data problem, there is the part where you have to kind of refine the problem. You have to frame the problem. That's the first step. And as part of framing the problem, you also have to think about whether this actually brings value to the business. Sometimes people have an idea, like maybe we can do this. Should we even do this?
Yep.
Is data AI even the right product to solve it?
Yep.
Are there risks associated with it? That's a new topic that's coming in conversations. Like, let us evaluate whether we should do this, just whether there's a business case for it. And once you've done that, then it comes to problem refinement. Are we asking the right questions? The business will have a set of questions, but that's not the same question that goes to the data science team. The business would think in terms of, hey, I want to reduce cost. Ultimately, it's about either reducing cost or increasing revenue or some form of that. And then when it comes to the data science team, it becomes either a classification problem or a regression problem or it's a grouping problem. So the questions that we are asking from the business and going to the data science team, there's a gap there, and we need to have a translation in between. And so now I feel like, I can't speak for all the corporates, but the ones I have seen, I think there's some process in place. They do realize that it can't be a hit and trial. It's not an experiment anymore. The value of data science is proven. Everybody believes in it. Now it's just about how can you make this more systematic so that We don't waste time experimenting. So the processes and structures, I think, are more or less in place. I don't think anybody has like completely perfected it, but they're aware of it and they're working on it.
Perfect. I get that. But before I get there to the next question, which is hovering in my mind, there's one thing that comes glaring from all three of you, that it is the outcome that we need to define and the business problem that we need to actually articulate before we get into data science aspect of it. So there is a business component that is very, very important right at the beginning, so that when you go and start collecting data or even writing models, then you know what you're trying to achieve, and then the outcome, which is very valuable. The other thing which Swati, you mentioned, which was very close to my heart, is that even if one of my data scientists used to tell me, Shelly, if I build a model and if your business is not able to execute it, what's the point of me spending time in building something like that? Because it may be too expensive to execute, or maybe the business ownership is not there, or business engagement is not there. So we need to get all of that aligned. So that I get. Another question that comes to mind, and I think Sanjay and Lorenzo touched there, and Swati, you also mentioned, but I want to clarify a bit on the three terminologies. One is analytics, data science, and machine learning. Now, why I say that is because we've been doing analytics. I've been doing that for 25 years. Me and Sanjay almost started their career together in Delhi. And we've been doing that. And we've been doing analytics. We have not been doing data science. Data science only, I think we've lost Sanjay. Hopefully we'll get him back. Data science is, the term data science only got there a few years ago. And then now that we used to build analytics models, we used to build statistical models, now suddenly they are machine learning models, and I don't understand how that changed. So what do you think in your mind the difference between machine learning, analytics, and data science?
So, yeah. I think the one big difference why we've had all these different terminologies is because now we have big data. Mm-hmm. So if you think of it, the fact that we have so much data available, the way you would actually utilize them is slightly different from how you would use them in the past. And that's why machine learning, has come in. I mean, it won't work if you don't have a lot of data, for example. And when you have a lot of data, sorry, can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you. Keep going.
Yeah. And when you have a lot of data, you need to change the way you apply your methods to make it work, to make sense out of it. So that has been one, I think, change in why we've moved on from just saying analytics to more of data science and machine learning.
Mm-hmm. Lorenzo, what do you think about it?
Yeah, I think that makes a lot of sense. So I actually gave a presentation about this recently, and this idea that how did machine learning come about? So it's so one aspect, right, is the huge data sets are coming around. And the second is because there's huge data sets, that was also paired with the development of these new algorithms that were precisely designed to detect patterns from huge data sets. If you look at, if you remember your traditional statistics classes, a lot of the focus is really around, hypothesis testing around populations based on samples. But now we're getting to this age where, if you have 10 gig of data, instead of just getting a sample, you can get the whole population, and you can actually train models that are really, really accurate. On top of that is because of those two things, those two factors coming together, we are starting to enter an age where data that used to not be statistically modeled in an accurate way is now being able. We now have the ability to make business decisions or automate business decisions using them. So an example is image recognition. Another example is natural language processing. So in probably before 5 to 10 years ago, there has been some natural language processing going on, but it's not yet at the stage where the performance of machines is comparable to that of humans. But then just 2 years ago, a new model called BERT uses transfer learning on the whole of and learns patterns from the whole of Wikipedia, and we're all of a sudden in a stage where deep learning models can answer questions with a similar accuracy as actual people. So yeah, I think that's a key difference as well. So number one, in terms of the accuracy of the models that we're getting, and second, the types of data that we're able to process and predict with, whether it's image or natural language.
Okay. Sanjay, what do you think? As I mentioned, I think we lost you when we were talking about the difference between machine learning, analytics, and data science. These terminologies, we all, good old times, we've been working on analytics, but these all new terminologies that have come in, and people use that term machine learning models most of the time, which to you and me are simple statistical models which we've been building for such a long time. So is there a difference in your thought process that these things are different to the ones which current generation takes it as machine learning?
I would say the fundamental tool, the core tools are same, but the way we are applying have changed a little bit. So now the importance of hypothesis has come down and experimentation has gone up, right? Because your computation power is fast and very quickly you can turn things around. And that's why you can explore with and test a large number of variables, and you keep on testing, experimenting it, and see whether it's working or not, right? That's one thing. And second, since you are not relying very heavily on a hypothesis, you try to do a large number of models and try to learn from the behavior of your variables and the models across all those different models and draw an inference which you strongly feel would work, right? And again, you do not position this as something written from a holy book. You say, okay, test, experiment it, and if it is working, use it, right? So not necessarily the hypothesis kind of thing. So that is making a big difference now. So even at the individual is the core of it, right? But the implementation has very significantly changed.
Okay.
That's why now very quickly we run the model, right? So the turnaround time for a model has increased. And so very quickly you test, you fail fast, and you win fast.
Yep. Okay. Sorry. Thank you for your answers. Before I get to the next step, which is skills, I just tell you that there are around about 30 people watching us at the moment, simultaneously along the channels. And I request all of you guys to please feel free to ask questions, because this is your opportunity to ask these guys any questions that you've got in your mind, you want to clarify, you want them to answer. This is your time. So please do ask questions. Okay. Thank you for that clarification around machine learning, analytics, and data science. In my view, I've got a different version to that, Sanjay, and I think we've had that discussion a few times. For me, you build an analytics model, you build a statistical model, and you take machine learning as a next step to modeling, where the model is being recalibrated with the changes in the data by itself, where the self-learning models come into play, and that is where machine learning plays a major role. Apart from that, all the models, like we used to do neural networks once upon a time, regression, logistic, you name them. We've been doing that for such a long time. We call them statistical models, and they are statistical models. So you need to build them first for the first time, and then when they get into production, as Sanjay mentioned, that is when machine learning comes into play. It keeps on running them, recalibrates. So you don't need to call people like Sanjay or myself or other consultants like Lorenzo to come and tweak the model, but it recalibrates by itself. So that's my thinking, and everyone has their own thinking in this space. Yeah. So let's go to the next thing. There are lots of people who are beginners who are watching us at the moment. So an important aspect of this is skills. And that's a big elephant in the room. What are the important skills for becoming a data scientist? And so let's start with Swati. Swati, what do you think what kind of skill sets should people have if they want to become a data scientist?
So I think a lot of if you look at job descriptions, it looks like when companies are trying to hire data scientists, they want somebody who knows everything in the world. And the truth is that data scientist is a very multidisciplinary, a job which requires multidisciplinary skill sets. Mm-hmm. So you need to be comfortable with things like statistics, with even computer science. You need to know how machine learning and AI works. You need to know, and I think one of the things that we don't talk about often is the communication skills.
Mhm.
I don't think you can get away without that. I mean, if you just know how to run your models, statistics, your computer science stuff, and know machine learning, and most of the time you can get away with it. But I think increasingly the expectation is that you want somebody who can actually talk about the results that they generate, who can connect with the business to some extent, and be able to come up with results which other people understand as well, and not just they're not just within themselves, but they're able to communicate what people want and give them what they want.
Okay. Thank you for that, and I will take a bit of that and take a shot at you later in the conversation. Lorenzo, what do you think from a product management point of view? What kind of skill sets should a data scientist have in order to become successful?
I think before like all of the technical skills is really, I can't stress enough how crucial the soft skill aspect is. So adding to Swati's point earlier about how you need to have people that are very much aligned with the problem that you're trying to solve. From a product management standpoint, that means like we're the ones who spend the most time talking to whoever is going to be using the product, who's going to be using the product, who do you want to be using the product, basically obsessing yourself over their problems. And from once a product manager knows about the problems in a great way, as much as possible, you want to make sure that you have a team that understands that the core purpose of everything you're trying to do is to fill gaps. Because if it's clear to them what the gap is, then that should reflect in how they design the rest of their work. So for example, let's say you're a machine learning researcher. You ask them, okay, what's your accuracy metric? Everyone's going to say, okay, if it's a regression model, you can use some sort of RMSE, something like that. But what you actually want to make sure is that, number one, the target variable that you have and the error metric you have for that target variable should be representative of the value that the model is contributing to the end users of your product. So for me, from a product standpoint, that's why I'm trying to emphasize, like, basically, on top of the technical aspects, as Swati mentioned, you want to have a team that is as passionate as you in terms of like solving a problem and making that basically reflect in every design decision that's made in the product.
Okay, Sanjay, what do you think? What skill set do you look for when you hire data scientists in your team?
So in addition to what Swati and Lorenzo has said, what I'm looking for is very inherent raw analytical skill, right?
Okay.
Which gives you a sense of data. And then people hone these skills through training in statistics or econometrics, sometime in educations. Many engineers have it, but that inherent skill is very, very important. Because despite giving a lot of structure, some of the structure is vanishing from the process, right? Initially, we were giving hypothesis, so that was creating a structure, right? So all the unstructured situation was challenged at the hypothesis formation stage. Now, a lot of unstructured situation arise when we are experimenting with that, right? So that inherent analytical skill of an individual, the sense of numbers should help him understand whether he's comparing the comparable or not. And many times, many grievous mistakes is done by very accurate, very good models, but the wrong inference has been drawn because the test and control were not rightly set.
Yep.
Right. And the number which are give you a false confidence that, oh, this is everything is right, but actually you are comparing apples and oranges.
Okay. So my old view on this is that we have three pillars. We've got the data people, who are the data wranglers, data engineers, people who bring data together. They are good IT people in my view. They're technologists. They can write SQL, they can write whatever. Then there's the middle pillar, which is the statistical modeling aspect of it, where you need people who've got masters in statistics or PhD in statistics who actually can build the models and also make sense out of it a bit. And then you've got the third pillar, which is the insights guys who have understanding of the data, little understanding of the models, and a good communication skills where they go in and have a chat with the product teams or the business teams in order to have that executed. I think this is how we structured, every time I've structured my teams, this is how I've structured it. Now, in my mind, when someone says the word data scientist, all these three skill sets I want in one person, which is very difficult to have, because you can't have, to be honest, I've had that problem where a person who is very good at statistical science, statistical modeling, but cannot bring data because he can't. Then I've got a very good a person who's writing a good model but can't communicate. And 90% of the time, a PhD is not good at communicating with the business. So you've got that challenge in getting in one person. I think that is very hard to find, and I don't know how that will change if we go going forward. But that's a true data scientist for me, and I doubt there are many in the on this planet who can actually do all the three things. That's my point of view. Could be wrong. Let's take it then. Yep. Before we get to the next thing, I just wanted to ask you if any one of you, and I know Sanjay does, when you recruit people, can you give us an example? This is just for the people who actually are wanting to get into data science. What kind of interviews, what kind of engagement do they have with the hiring manager at the time of the interview? Do they talk? Do you guys go very deep into a data pulling exercise or modeling exercise or communication? What do you look at, and what kind of interview skill set are you looking for when you're interviewing people? So Sanjay, do you want to have a go at that? I know you do that all the time.
Yeah, so if it is at entry level, then we try to do some sort of testing, to test analytical skills. Few years ago, when there was relatively smaller number of interviews, we used to use puzzles in those interviews and see how long the person is solving that. It's not necessary that the person will solve the puzzle, but how the person is approaching that, right? So at entry level, it is the raw capability to analyze. And then if the person is familiar with a language or something, then the ability to code. And then some mock case examples, etc., which will help us understand the ability to transfer the skill to a new analytical problem. If we are hiring lateral positions, then many times those hiring is for a very demand, right? So this program has to be done, say, in PySpark, in a particular ecosystem. So then we start evaluating the technical capability in that particular language, in that particular ecosystems as well. And many times this takes more importance for lateral hiring. Now, if this is for a particular domain, then that domain related issue also become important. For example, if I'm hiring for life sciences, I need to know that the person has done something in life sciences, databases, data terminology, etc., etc. But at the entry level, it is purely the analytical skill.
Any interesting interview session or any interesting interview question that you want to share?
Well, it depends how it goes. Sometimes I give very wacky, for example, person told me that, okay, I'm coming, I'm sorry, I'm late because there was a traffic jam. And I say, okay, you have to devise that. What data you need and how would you solve that? And that shows me, sometimes people go very, very, very high level. Okay, for an economy level, you have to figure out how the economy is growing and people are growing, etc., etc. Some people get the exact at that slice, right? They ask me how many roads are there, is there office in one particular direction, etc. Question itself shows me that the guy is thinking on the right track.
Perfect. Swati, any interesting interview questions that you've got?
Well, I have not been interviewing very much, and I don't have a lot of stories. But I agree with what Sanjay said, that sometimes it's good to be creative, because in the end you want somebody who's a problem solver. So you can test their theoretical skills, but there's also this aspect of testing their problem solving skills. So if you throw them an unexpected problem, how would they go about it? What is their approach? Technical skills is one thing, but there's also this propensity to be curious and to be able to think about a problem from a different aspect.
And Lorenzo, what do you think?
No, I think it makes a lot of sense. Maybe I'll take a jab at something on the technical side. So I think you can you can sort of get creativity from people if, from a data set standpoint, you give them something super unstructured. So I think something we do is, so for example, imagine giving a link to the whole of Wikipedia, and you ask them, okay, analyze, like do some sort of EDA, and it's just like, oh, but where's the CSV? There's no CSV. It's just like get it from there, and then go crazy, right? So the universe of possible things they could present is endless. So it's kind of like what Sanjay said. It's a super like generalized thing, and you give them the opportunity to focus on something specific and get insight from there.
And I think there is one more thing that comes to mind, the ability to ask questions. I think we shy away from asking questions, but for analytics and for data science, I think that is very important, because you need to nail down and make sure that you write the question in a plain English language, because if you know the problem, then only you can work towards solving that problem. So you need to be asking that question quite well. And I find lots of people, a lot of data scientists actually not taking that approach, and they just say, oh, I've got the problem, I'm sitting down in the corner and trying to solve it using data and whatever I've got, not interrogating enough to find out what we actually need as an end result. Does it make sense?
Yeah.
No, yeah, I think that's most of the applicants we get.
Okay, I want to throw one in. I think any one of you can raise your hand and answer this one. What is one advice you want to give to the budding data scientists to focus on so they can be successful? Coding, process, focus on outcome, focus on communication skills. Any one of you want to have a go? Please raise your hand.
Okay, so maybe I'll try to take a jab at this. So maybe share a bit about my background. So I actually didn't take computer science in the beginning. I actually took accounting and applied economics. So there's a lot of econometrics there, but there wasn't like a lot of like Python stuff like that. What actually did happen is like I was probably like in my earlier years in college, and I found out about data science, and I decided I want to get into it. So what actually got me successful there is I was able to discover mentors and create a sort of learning plan, and basically stick to that learning plan because I truly believe that it made sense, and I really wanted to get into data science. So if I could give advice for newbies, people who want to get in, people who are not, whether you're in computer science, whether you're like in any sort of background, the first step I would recommend is find a mentor. Find a mentor who can give you some idea of like the things that you have to be doing. What are the 5 things you have to be doing? Second, from there, create that learning plan that you have justified to yourself, that you have confirmed with other experts that makes sense. And number 3, stick to that learning plan and really execute it, create time for it. And then eventually 2 to 3 years, you're going to get there.
Okay. Thank you for that, Lorenzo. Sanjay, you want to add to that, or?
Yeah, I can share my 2 cents on this. I would suggest that coding is very important.
Okay.
Right? Learn some coding. It could be very simple, basic, whatever you are doing, or it could be Python or anything. Coding is very, very important, because coding enforces a discipline in the way we are think and executing that thinking on the paper, right?
Okay.
Systematically. And that is very, very important. And ultimately, it is the code which is our language. When I used to hire, when SAS was the dominant one, I used to tell in the first few minutes in my interview that if you do not know English, I'm fine. But if you do not know SAS, it won't work. So for analytic individual, right, actually it is the coding. So pick one language. It could be very simple, right? Or simple for you. Be a master in that. If you are master in one language, you are not going to stop at that language, because the word would change and you will quickly learn the next one. But this is the coding language, which is English for us. So I think I will put a lot of emphasis on that.
Okay. Thank you very much, Sanjay, and the team. Next section is around success stories. And I know all of you have delivered some very, very successful projects. So a question to each one of you, same question. Is there one case study where you were involved and you think where data science made a huge difference to the organization you were working for, whether your client, whether your own organization, or whether a product you created, anything you want to talk about so that people can take away one success story. But before we go that, I would like to request people to please ask questions. There are still 30 people watching us, and I don't know why they're not asking questions. There's something going on. Please ask questions. These guys are here to answer your questions, and we'll get into Q&A just after this. So, one case study. Who wants to go first?
Okay,
Lorenzo?
I'll try.
Okay, Sanjay.
Okay, let me try one. And this is a very old. So I'm not talking about the machine learning age. I'm talking about around 15 years ago. This was a bank, and in a bank, the branches are supposed to keep a minimum amount of cash, so that cash can be deployed invested in the market. Whereas branch manager wants to keep higher amount of cash because that is reducing the risk for him. If branch runs out of cash, there's a lot of scrutiny on the branch manager. So head office usually was saying that reduce the cash and manage cash. And then it's reduced into political bargaining between the controlling officers and the branch manager. Why you have 5% of your liability as cash, you'll say, by the way, my target is already exceeded by 15%. Okay, do 20% excess and I'll let you go. So what the data scientists or econometrician teams did over there, they collected the sample and figured out the distribution of inflow and outflow. And with that inflow and outflow at each level of cash, they estimated the probability of cash out. Okay. And they say, okay, if you keep this much, the probability of cash out is just 3%. And then branch manager said, okay, 3% I can live with, right? So within few months, the cash holding within a particular region, that was the Delhi region, reduced from around 6% to 2%. And no machine learning, no big thing, very simple distribution and probability estimation.
Interesting. Anyone, any other story you have got, Swati?
So I'm going to answer this question a little differently. I've not been personally involved in this project, but because right now we're all facing a big problem called coronavirus, and I've been doing some research on how data is helping solve that problem. And there were some case studies came up which I personally felt fascinated by them. So, in terms of finding a cure, like a vaccine for coronavirus, AlphaFold, which is a DeepMind initiative. So like a virus is in the end, it's not really a living organism. It is really just a protein structure with some fats around it. And to be able to find a way to block this virus, you need to be able to find the structure of the protein. Normally, this process in a laboratory takes months and months, sometimes even years, to find the protein structure. But using deep learning, they've come up with their own prediction of what the structure would be. So they've essentially, what they've done is they've really reduced the time and given the researchers like a head start in terms of what they are looking at. And then take that one step further. There is a company called In Silico Medicine, which what it does is it has taken these structures and said, what kind of molecules do we need to block this? So using GAN, a technique called GAN, Generative Adversarial Network, they've come up with molecule structures that could potentially block these protein structures. Now, this is also very hypothetical. Those molecules may or may not exist. But in the end, you have something that people in the laboratory, it's a challenge for them now that we have a list of all these molecules which could potentially work against this virus. Let us find something which maybe can we create them in the laboratory or can we discover them? And this whole I find this very fascinating on how using deep model able to quickly with the molecules that could block it. And so what you've done is you've really shortened the process. A typical vaccine development process could take years. And now with all of this development using data and AI, we've kind of shrunk the whole timeline. We really haven't seen the result yet, but I think this has really helped. This is really helping the whole world.
Great. I think this is something what design of experiments can actually help us drive a lot, Sanjay. And I'll come, please hold that thought, because that is one of my questions, which I'm going to throw at you guys in just 20 seconds. Before that, I just want to go to Lorenzo. Lorenzo, any of your case studies that you want to share with the audience?
Well, a really quick one is before this, before this copy, I was actually doing my own consulting firm for some clients in Australia, actually. And one of the really interesting cases we had was this case where I was working with customer service teams and helping them plan out what were the optimal times to, let's say, schedule breaks, what were the optimal periods to have part-timers come in and take in calls and stuff like that. And so what we were actually able to do with like some basic modeling is to be able to predict at an hourly level, like what would trend of customer call inflows, when would it come in the day, and depending on which day of the year, and depending on like how many days after, let's say, holidays would happen, whether it's like Holy Week, whether it's Christmas. So what we were able to do is that because of the sufficiently accurate results, we were able to guide the HR departments of these customer service teams to ensure that they had headcount and they had enough headcount on the right days, on the right months, and the right hours of the day. So just a really simple one.
Okay. Good. I cannot let you guys go away at this time without a question on COVID-19. And Swati, you did mention the use case that you're thinking about, but can data science really help in getting a cure to COVID? At the moment, each one of us are quarantined, I would imagine. You are in Singapore, Swati?
Yes.
Quarantined. You are in Philippines?
I'm not really quarantined, but it's social distancing. The government has total lockdown.
Are you quarantined, Lorenzo?
Yeah, here it's like legit quarantine. Like you're not allowed to go out.
And Sanjay, you are quarantined in Delhi?
Yeah, not allowed to go out, right?
Yeah, same with us. So we are in a lockdown. So first of all, I request each one of our followers and each one of our viewers to please stay indoors, don't go out, maintain social distancing, and stay inside and don't go out, full stop. This is the time we need to flatten the curve, and that is very, very important. Now, having said that, that question arises around how data science can help solving COVID-19 issue at the moment at large. So Sanjay, what's your point of view? Do you want to extend Swati's point or anything else, Sanjay, you want to add? You've got a different point of view. Please go for it.
So one is, yes, what Swati has said, and I think good amount of work is happening over there, finding out what are the probable molecules and then expedite the research for that. That's one. And other could be the network analysis, which could be used to trace out if a COVID carrier has roamed about. So who are the potential people he could have infected? I don't know whether the data would permit that kind of analysis, but I have seen some attempts on that.
Mm-hmm. Okay, Lorenzo, you want to extend that?
Yeah, so I think a contentious topic actually right now is to what extent should data scientists be involved with the research going out. A lot of Medium articles are coming out, and a lot of them are getting a lot of hits. And I think that the role of a data scientist here would actually depend on like what level of expertise do you have in the specific field that you want to contribute on. So if it's like, if you want to do simulation modeling for, let's say, if you have expertise on doing simulations on what kind of effects, for example, would your personal decisions or your involvement or you basically following the quarantine measures, like how would that actually affect the the curve, flattening it and stuff like that. I really like the work around that because it's in a very practical way, it's able to communicate to the public the effects of the right behavior on their fellow people and stuff like that. So those are, I think that's like one really big role that data scientists should be taking. Basically informing people that what they're doing matters and how is that going to positively impact the world.
Okay. Thank you, Lorenzo. I have got a point of view on that. And that is that at the moment, there is so much of data available on social media on COVID itself. If you just look at COVID-19, there is so much of information on COVID on social media that I think the technology that we've got can actually access and get that information out and try to inform the people that what they should do and what they shouldn't do. For example, and this is just a hypothesis. For example, there is information at a very high level. I know that there are today 21,000 deaths, but I don't know at a local level what's going on. I don't know what's happening around Sanjay's, your household in east of Kailash. What's happening in Swati near your house, and what's happening, Lorenzo, near you. I don't know if tomorrow something happens to me, where is the nearest center or hospital where I need to go. So I think that information is very critical, and if we could use data science as one of the aspects to take it and try and provide that to the general public, I think that would be very, very helpful. But that's only curing the aspect or reacting after something has happened. The other aspect that comes to mind is, and that's extending Swati, your point of view, is that there is so much of research that has been done at the moment, which is available free online on COVID. But I think the problem which the scientists or the doctors at the moment are having is that which information is relevant and which is not. So maybe, Lorenzo, using the NLP aspect of it, you could actually filter down what is relevant and what is not. There are 26,000 research papers available for free online at the moment, and I've got the link for that. And we need to actually figure out how do we get how do we actually use that information and do something with that. I think that is my point of view, explaining to what Swati had mentioned going forward. So I think that's things that we could do. I would be very, very happy if some data scientists who really want to engage at this stage and learn from what's happening online, on what's happening in COVID, and want to help them, I'm more than happy to work with them to find out stuff. And I think Lorenzo and Sanjay and of course Swati will also be interested in helping out there as well. I've just lost Swati and Sanjay, but doesn't matter. We still have questions to do, and so hope Swati's back, and hopefully Sanjay will be back soon as well. So let's jump on to questions. But before the questions, there are lots of messages out here, and I think people have started. People are starting to mention many things. So I will go one by one on the right hand side from top to bottom. First one was a hi from Frank Fedeli. Then there was a hello from Selena Garcia. I think Selena, Lorenzo, you know Selena or something?
Yeah.
Okay. That's good. I've got Sanjay. I can see Sanjay, but why can't I see him on the screen? What's going on, Sanjay? Okay, I'll try and bring you on. There is Saurabh Babbar who said, superb, great stuff. There is Piotr Karupa who said, great, hello, that's great. We've got now the question. So that was just saying hello and great. Let's go to the question. The first question is from Saurabh Babbar, and he says, how much of quantum computing is predicted to be used in the development of society in the coming days? Anyone wants to take that question? Sanjay, Lorenzo, Swati? Anyone?
Well, I don't understand the question completely. Like, is he asking how quantum computing will be used in the future? Is that what the question is?
I think that is what he meant, yes.
Well, I mean, my 2 cents, I'm not a quantum computing expert, but at very nascent stages of quantum computing. But if you're able to implement quantum computing, a lot of problems that we currently think are kind of unsolvable, they suddenly become, they're possible because of the huge computing power that you will unlock. In terms of where it will be used, I think that's something that really is left to our imagination. Just like with AI, with any technology, a technology is an enabler, but in the end, where you use it is really like it really depends on use cases. It'll be very similar to how AI is being used, for example, and we're still discovering use cases. So I think it will be the same for quantum computing. I mean, of course, it will be used heavily in research. It will be used for, the space exploration and all kinds of high-tech things. But yeah, I mean, probably somebody else can answer that question. I'm not really a quantum computing expert.
Lorenzo, you want to have a go?
Yeah, so I'm also not a quantum computing expert, but I do know enough that one of the biggest implications, right, is that there will be an super increased abundance in compute power. And one of the biggest effects you could predict if that happens and that becomes widely accessible is that the cost of compute will keep dropping, and it'll, basically keep dropping. Right now, we're still in a state where, in the context of AI, a lot of the models, and in natural language processing, this is particularly true. So Google always publishes new models, but not everyone can replicate them. When you get to a state where compute power, very huge compute power, is maybe like a few orders of magnitude cheaper, it all of a sudden democratizes the accessibility to those kinds of modeling. So I think that would be really great in terms of the context of data science. It would make things a lot more accessible. And yeah, so that's one of the things.
Okay, Sanjay, you want to add to that? Quantum computing? Sanjay, I think he's frozen. Okay, we'll come back to that later. There is a question from Osama Abdelmoula, and he's saying, hi, what is the first course that you recommend to start ML? Anyone?
I can take this on. So it depends on what kind of background you currently have. So for a lot of people who don't come from a computer science background, coding will be the first barrier. So in my opinion, there's this book called Learn Python 3 the Hard Way. That really helped me build up my fundamentals. So if you want to get into Python, that's a good one. If you're already a coder, let's say you come from a software engineering background and you want to get into AI, I actually hugely recommend Fast.ai. So I'm a big fan of Jeremy Howard, the Fast AI deep learning series. So he teaches everything from classic machine learning to really, really cutting edge deep learning, whether it's with image recognition, natural language processing. So that's what I would recommend.
Swati?
So apart from what Lorenzo already mentioned, I would also recommend that they look at some of these websites called Hegel, where you have a lot of data sets available, but they also have some very simple tutorials for you to get started. And they go very step by step. And that could be really a good first introduction to what a data science problem could look like. What are the steps that you go through? So I think that's another place to start with. But there are so many resources on the internet if you want to learn about data science, about machine learning. I mean, you're really spoiled for choices. There are so many courses and there's so many books written. So I think you're very lucky in that sense that if you want to get started, I think there's nothing stopping you.
And I can shamelessly say that people can read my book as well, which is called Making Money Out of Data. And you will find a few, 5 use cases from 5 different industries where data is being used and how those data problems, it's a business book, it has nothing to do with, there is no data science in it, but it is how business problems are created in several industries and how they're solved using data science. I think that could give you some ideas as well. So have a look at that book. Okay, thank you both. I'll go to the next question. Saurabh Babar asks, it would take much time to get back to normal daily life, but data science can help really eradicate the infected people and isolate. This would require a big team, but is it possible?
So maybe I'll have a go. I mean, it's not really a question. I think it's more of a comment. And there's a lot of stuff going on in the world in terms of tracing, tracing people or people who've had contact, the contact tracing. And the Singapore government has recently released an app called Trace Together. So it's an app which you download, and it works on Bluetooth. So what it does is, if you have a person who's identified as having COVID-19, it would look back at the history and say who are the people who have been in close contact with that person. It of course depends on everybody having their, the phone and the app with them. And it would automatically trigger that kind of contact tracing. So instead of you having a team of, say, detectives going around and trying to find who this person has been in contact with in the last 14 days, that app does it for you. So in a way, it has automated that process of finding people who could potentially have been infected and triggering that isolation warning for them.
I've got an idea, but I'll come back to that before I ask Sanjay and Lorenzo. Sanjay, what do you think? And if you read the question there, I'll repeat it for you. Saurabh is saying that it would take much time to get back to normal daily life, but data science can help eradicate or in my view, identify the infected people and isolate. It will require a big team, but is it possible?
Yes. So as Swati just mentioned, I have seen some attempts for this network programming, network analysis in India, where people have tried to identify that a person who has traveled back to India, what is his potential network, where he has visited, and potentially what could be those geographical clusters where this infection might have spread out. And then the team was headed towards that to isolate people, identify people, right? So that's one area where it is helping. And I think post this, then a lot of work has to be done to identify people who would be financially in a very bad position, particularly, identifying who had a sort of working on gig economy, earning daily and spending daily, or earning monthly, spending monthly kind of a thing. So that would be the post-COVID scenario. Would be
Lorenzo?
Migration analysis help. Yeah, so a lot of migration is happening, right? So in big city, if the jobs have disappeared, a lot of people are traveling back, right? And most of the people are equipped with mobile data, with mobiles in their hands, right? So can be figured out where these guys are going and where could be that potential migration of that infection.
Sanjay, you think absolutely like me, and I'll come back to just extending that a little bit, because the moment Swati mentioned that, it was like I had the answer and I thought I'll discuss, but then you pointed it out. Of course you would. I know. We think alike. Anyway, Lorenzo, before I get to that extension of that point.
Yeah, right. So last thing for me is that I think the quality of information is really important here. So quality of information has to be high for both the regular people in a country and also for the key decision makers in a country. So whether it's like, the executive branch of your government or the Department of Health. So I think there's a huge opportunity to apply natural language processing today in order to ensure that, for example, on the consumer side, ensure that regular people are getting the right information. We have to make sure that no fake news is coming out. I know that a lot of countries are slowing down because people think it's just like a regular flu. So if we ensure that the feeds of people are filled with factual things, we can increase the chance that they'll behave properly. And at the same time, for like the key decision makers, let's say it's the Department of Health, if data scientist firms can partner with them and ensure that they have the tools that will inform them on how to best address their specific country, that's also a huge opportunity.
And to add to that, to what Sanjay said and to what Swati said, I have got an additional thing to add. With the mobile phones, we know where each person is at what point in time. The moment you identify me as an individual who is infected, you can actually find for the last 1 week where all did I go and who all people were near me based on my GPS location. The moment you identify me, you can identify next 10 people. It will require a huge amount of computing power to actually identify that, but it is very easy because you can just circle around where I was going and what all people were, where were more than one numbers next to me in that same area. If we could go look find it as close as 2 meters, 10 meters, whatever it is, then I think we can identify people by name who I was in touch with in the last 1 week. And that way we can isolate those people as well. But that's just a thought. I don't know whether people will be interested in, because that takes away the privacy altogether out of the way. There is no privacy thereafter. But now we need to think whether it is privacy that we are worried about or the life of people that we are worried about. And that's what I used to say all the time when Sanjay, when I used to go on stage and say privacy is a myth. I think this has taken away privacy altogether to a new different level. So there is nothing called privacy in my view. Anyways,
we already have.
Sorry?
We already have this app operational in Singapore, and well, I have it on my phone, and I know everybody I know has it. So the government has, really gone to the extent of assuring that we are not storing any personal information, but this only gets used in the event that it triggers like a contact, a potential contact. So I think you have to protect people's privacy to whatever extent you can. But as you say, it's a balance between like, is my privacy more important to me or is my health and my life more important to me?
Can you share the link to that app so that people on LinkedIn and Twitter and Facebook can actually, know what that app is, so that people
I will do that. And actually, the government has even made it kind of open source, so it can be actually used by everybody. Yeah.
Sanjay, it's a very good idea for companies in India to actually learn from it and take it to quickly execute it in India. Okay. Next question. There is a hi from Julia Valdez in Colombia. So we've gone as far as Colombia. And she's got the question which says, what is the importance of using big data to solve business and social problems? Greeting from Colombia. Who want to take that?
I think I can take this specific one. So in that part of the world, actually, one of the big issues I think right now is migrant settlements. So actually, I'll just mention, like in Thinking Machines, we do actually have partnerships where we're trying to use geospatial data science in order to identify migrant settlements using satellite images. So one of the key effects of that is that we can partner with government institutions who want to direct resources to these settlements so that they get the basic human rights that they need. So that's one example of how we can use really big data sets in the context of satellite images in order to help developmental organizations direct resources to the people who need it the most.
Okay. Anyone else wants to take that question? Sanjay, your point of view?
Yeah, there are examples, and again, using the image analysis for forestry, for agriculture, etc., right? So there are a good number of examples. Now, big data there's a definition problem here, huge volume data or, rapidly changing data, etc. I have not seen very strong, robust, effective data discovery engines so far. But the large volume data with streaming data coming in, that kind of things are very, very useful in doing the analysis. And particularly the new kind of data science solutions where the solution is in an automated fashion, generating recommendation and executing, right? For example, for e-retailer, pricing could be one example, right? It is checking continuously what is the inventory. It is checking where the clicking history is going on, how the stuff is being picked up, what is happening at other website, how the traffic is going on. And dynamically, it is optimizing the price and giving the price, right? So this could be one example for that.
Okay. Swati, you want to add something to it?
So I think there are, answering this question more generically, the importance of using data to solve sensitive problems. Now, if you think of it, especially for social problems, they're usually problems which are probably spanning geography, a big geographical area, or a big population. So the moment a large number of data is involved, that's automatically big data. So if you want to solve problems which systematically over a big over the entire society, over big populations, I mean, it's you need a lot of data, and that's by definition that's big data. So when you have a lot of data, you can analyze it, you can find ways to find patterns, or you can look to predict something or classify it in ways that is useful. So I would say yes, it is very important that we use big data to solve problems in business and in society.
Perfect. So last question, and that is pointed to Sanjay. And Sanjay, I left it out because you dropped out at the time. There's a question from Ramesh Kadimilaya. He says, can you please explain Mr. Sanjay's case study on bank with probability? And I don't know what he means by that. Maybe you want to throw some more light on that.
Okay, so that was very, very simple. Branch managers are holding too much of cash, right? And controlling officers want them to reduce the cash.
Yep.
Branch manager is holding the cash because he fears there will be a cash out. And if there's a cash out, there will be a lot of questioning why you did not keep the adequate cash, because customers will shout, etc., etc. Whereas the controlling officers wants to reduce this cash because this is an idle cash, so they want to invest it, right?
Yep.
So that how much cash a branch manager would hold depended on the branch manager's gut feeling and his risk aversion. Now he had absolutely no idea what would be no scientific idea what would be the cash demand, net cash demand tomorrow, right? So he's using thumb rules, and those thumb rules varies very significantly depending which side of table you are sitting. Controlling officer says 1% is good enough. Branch manager say no, I'm a jewelry guy, etc., etc. I need 12%, right? And then it becomes bargaining. This process is simply mapping out what is your cash net outflow distribution. And some days distribution, net outflow is very huge. Some place, it is negative. In some days it is positive. So typically, what is that distribution, and what is the probability that net outflow would be positive, and to what extent? That gives you probability distribution of that net outflow. And with that, you can figure out what kind of cash you need to keep along with that probability. So the moment they get say 2% cash, my probability of cash running out of cash is say 3%, the person feels comfortable. So it is mapping out what was the behavior of this cash flow during the last 1 month, 2 months, 3 months, and they showing, see, it has never gone beyond this, etc., etc. And the moment they get comfort in that probability distribution, they started buying it.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Hope, Ramesh, you got your answer. So guys, before we get off the call, one simple question to all three of you. Any message you want to leave for your for the audience? Anything from your experience, your knowledge you want them to remember? Please go ahead. I will start with Lorenzo, then Sanjay, and then Swati, because in the alphabetical order.
Okay, so my final message is that I want people to know that data really is the future. You've probably read it in some article somewhere. This is not going to slow down. Data science is starting to mature, but then the opportunities and the value that you can create with data, which includes the stats aspect of it, the machine learning aspect, the programming aspect, it's only going to keep increasing. So I hugely recommend people who are still thinking about whether they want to get into the industry to actually do it. It's highly impactful, and it's also really, really fulfilling from a personal standpoint.
Perfect. Sanjay.
Okay, my advice would be to specialize wherever you want to specialize. So we spoke about 3 pillars. One is the data, the second is the algorithm, the third is consumption, which is business aspect of it, right? You choose whatever you want to specialize, but you need to have very good understanding of other 2 pillars also. Over a period of time, the dividing line between these 3 would blur, and people would not be demanding a pure data scientist or a pure data engineer or a pure business analyst guy. Again, we will reach a situation when SAS was dominant, the same guy was doing a very large part of the data manipulation, then algorithm, and then generating output, etc., etc. So choose your specialization, but have a very good understanding of the entire spectrum. And for that, you can choose a particular ecosystem, right? It could be SAS, it could be GCP, it could be AWS, Azure, whatever. So that's my recommendation.
Perfect. Swati.
So my message to everyone, especially to those who want to get into data science, is to not give up, because it can be very daunting, and to start small. In the sense that set small goals. It's a very vast field, and the more you get to it, the more you realize that there's so much more stuff to learn, and things are changing all the time. So start small, keep learning, and have a plan. I think it's very important to also have a plan for learning, like continuous learning. It's not a one-time thing that you've learned it and you're done, because there are new models being released all the time. So the other thing is to keep abreast of the news and new stuff, new research being done. It's if you get into this field, you have to have a plan to keep learning for life. That's my message.
Thank you. Before I go, there is one message that has just popped in. It says, from Poland, thank you for the inspiring call. So thank you, all of you. And from my behalf, I'm so grateful to all three of you for sparing 1 hour, 11 minutes of your life to come on the call and talk to the audience. Tell you the truth, this is one of the most watched calls so far I've had. We had 50 people watching it simultaneously at the same time and learning from here. So great call. Thank you very much, all of you, for your time, and see you soon.
Thank you.
Thanks for having
Thank you
us.
so much.
Okay.
Thanks so much.
Thank you. Bye now. So guys, thank you very much for all your time. I hope you learned a few things from the session. I'll be back next week with another leader or group of leaders in the emerging technology space. Please do not forget to follow me and like and share this episode with the people who can benefit from the session. And see you next week live here at the same place at 3 p.m. So bye now.